Well, hello, we are Isaac Donoso, Renato Figueroa, and Macarena Villarreal, and our presentation is about assessing reading. This assessment was carried out in Notre Dame School on May the 15th in a 9th grade with 30 students. The class took place from 10:15 to 11:45, being a 90 minutes class.
The first step in the assessment process is to establish what are we going to be assessing. If we look at the learning objective, students will be able to identify the main ideas of a text and organize them in a poster. What we mean is that we are going to be assessing reading comprehension. We understand reading as a highly complex process in which the reader plays an active role. And reading can be defined as the process of extracting and constructing meaning from text. But, as Carell stated, comprehending a text is not simply a function of the text itself. The text alone does not carry the meaning to be conveyed. The reader of a text makes a significant contribution to the meaning conveyed. They do this contribution with their background knowledge. Background knowledge is referred in the literature as schemata, or patterns which represent the way experience and knowledge are organized in the mind. Schemata constitute a powerful means used by readers in understanding. Therefore, comprehension is the interactive process between the reader background knowledge and the text. However, Carell found that readers may fail to understand a text if they do not follow a formal schema or the coherent organization, or if content schema, knowledge about the subject matter of the text, was lacking. Likewise, according to McKenna and Doherty-Stoll, the ultimate goal of reading is comprehension. However, comprehension is contingent upon mastery of a series of critical components that can be broken down into more finite skills. For instance, prediction, identification of themes, and visualization. Because the reader needs to develop the ability to put all these components together to create meaning or comprehension. The reader needs to be able to indicate the beginning, middle, and ending of a story, as well as to give specific details of a story in order to comprehend. For these reasons, before reading in the classroom, the teacher addressed or activate students' schemata by doing research about the author, predicting what the text will be about, looking for the meaning of keywords, and by watching a video about the novel.
We have decided to divide the standard validity into two parts, being the first one the curriculum validity. According to the national curriculum, 9th graders are able to comprehend literary texts, in this case an adapted novel. Students can also identify the main idea of a text, which is related to the established goal that was to identify the main idea of a text, and also students can identify keywords. Moreover, students are able to use diverse reading strategies to comprehend those texts. This is related to the Objetivo de Aprendizaje 11 and the Objetivo de Aprendizaje 12 about reading comprehension. For these reasons, students were asked in the class to read an adapted version of the novel The Call of the Wild. Also, while reading, students used the rule-based strategy, which consists in reading the text while deleting unnecessary or redundant information. Then, students were asked to identify keywords and main ideas of a text. So, what was done in the class was related to what the curriculum proposes that 9th graders can do and are able to do. The second part of the standard validity is the one proposed by the Common European Framework of Reference. It is important to highlight that, according to the national curriculum, ninth graders are supposed to have a level of proficiency A2, as the CEFR proposes. Therefore, students are expected to scan long texts in order to locate desired information and gather information from different parts of a text, or from different texts in order to fulfill a specific task.
The text used in this class was David Hill's adapted version of the novel The Call of the Wild by Jack London because it is aligned with the students' proficiency level. Students that are in the transition from A2 to B1. As you can see, in order to help the students to predict and understand what is happening in each passage, there are illustrations and also a glossary with a specific vocabulary.
The learning objective of the class being analyzed was to identify the main ideas of a text and organize them in a poster. Therefore, we considered that the most suitable way to assess this learning objective was through the use of a rubric. The rubric was created in order to deconstruct the reading comprehension skill into three different criteria. The first aspect to be assessed, which is also related to the skill declared in the learning objective, was if students were able to determine the importance of the ideas by separating them between main and secondary ones. The second aspect to be assessed was if students were able to summarize the text with their own words, presenting evidence related to the main ideas of the text. The final aspect to be assessed was if students were able to organize the ideas of the text coherently and chronologically, which will show if students were able to comprehend the main ideas from the different parts of the text instead of one isolated idea.
Why students need to identify and differentiate what is important in text from what is not. Because reading is not only the process of decoding the text word by word. While reading, students also need to analyze, meaning that they need to develop analytical skills. That is to say, according to Bloom, to move from lower order thinking skills to higher order thinking skills. Therefore, teachers should promote strategies that allow students to move in the continuum from lower to higher in order to develop the capacity to reconstruct the text and read critically. For example, to challenge author ideas and biases.
Two types of assessment were applied in this class: assessment for learning and indirect assessment. Assessment for learning was used because it was not meant to give students a mark, but to give them feedback on their reading skill. Moreover, since reading is an enabled skill, indirect assessment had to be used because reading must be assessed through another skill.
Who are the students the teacher was assessing? We have mentioned the standard validity of the learning objective chosen using as reference the national curriculum and the CEFR. However, Notre Dame is a private school, which has its own English program. Therefore, students have already acquired skills that go beyond what the CEFR and the national curriculum proposed. So, these are the characteristics of the students at this school. Firstly, it is relevant to mention that this class has 30 students, and this affects positively to the activities that are carried out in the classroom because it is easier to monitor students' work. Secondly, the students' sitting arrangement is always in groups of 5 people. This helps to develop collaborative work because they are used to work like that. Moreover, ninth graders in this school are mostly B1 readers because according to the CEFR, they can read straightforward factual texts on subjects related to their field and interest with a satisfactory level of comprehension. Therefore, the learning objective set, and the activities carried out to reach this objective in this class can differ from what the national curriculum expects, or the notion of what ninth graders are able to do. In terms of the communication part of the assessment process, we can declare that at the beginning of the class, the learning objective was projected on the board, and it remained like that during the whole class. Then, students were asked to think about the importance of this specific learning objective, which was to identify the main ideas of a text and organize them in a poster. The purpose of this exercise was meant to use inductive instruction in order to foster students' metacognitive skills. To do so, the teacher allowed the students to reflect by themselves on the importance that the learning objective has in their learning process, instead of giving them the answer beforehand. These are some of the answers of the students. The first one is that one student said that he thinks that it's important to do or to know how to identify main ideas because the reading process becomes easier. And also a student said that he agreed because then he can look at his notes and not read the whole text again. So by doing this, students had an idea of what the class will be about, what type of activity they will do, and what skill will be assessed at the end of the class.
The context of the assessment. Well, the classroom has a computer, projector, and speakers. These devices allow the teacher to play a video which gave students hints about the themes of the text. Therefore, students addressed the text with more knowledge about the content, making the process of identifying the main ideas easier. Also, every student had a physical copy of the book. For this reason, each of them was able to read individually. About the seating arrangement. Students were seated in groups of 5. In that way, it was easy for them to read a part of the text individually and afterwards to share impressions with their peers and compare them in order to find out whether they understood the same or not.
To conduct this activity, the instructions given help the students to organize themselves and the ideas that came up from reading the text by telling them to use the reading strategy previously taught, by giving them a specific question to guide the reading, and by setting the time they had to do the activity. By saying all this, the students were able to reach the learning objective according to the evidence we gathered. In this poster, students were able to identify the main idea because, as we can see, in a short paragraph they summarized the text by giving a general context and avoiding unnecessary details. By reading the poster, we can know that in this part of the book, Buck, the main character, is taken away from his home and he is punished by a man known as the man in the red sweater. Following this idea, the drawing helps to convey the message because it depicts what is happening in this passage. Finally, the question given was to help students to identify the main character feelings, to see if they comprehend what is not explicit. Their answer was that he felt mistreated, and even though the grammatical form should be he feels mistreated, our focus is not on writing, but in reading, and that they comprehend what they read. Now, if we see the students' work with the rubric on one side, we can notice that they totally accomplished the 3 different criteria. According to the comments made, they were able to identify the main idea, and there was also coherent, and the events were chronologically organized. In the second evidence, we can see that this group also presented a summary well done. Well, here they wrote about the first fight between the main character, Buck, and the antagonist, Spitz. The drawing helped us to understand what is the summary about. As you can see here, we have the two dogs. And the question makes the reference to two characters of the book, Spitz and Buck. And as the previous question, this one is also to guide the students to comprehend implicit information. So in this poster, students were able to make a coherent and well-organized summary too, as on the previous group. As you can see in the comments made in the rubric, they achieved the 9 points of this, and even though they had problems on writing, they were able to clarify what was not clear while speaking. And that is something valuable for us as teachers. And as was mentioned before, our goal is that they could identify the main idea and organize it in the poster, as our objective is established. Even though their writing had some minor mistakes, the objective of the class was achieved. Finally, the third group also write a summary in which we can understand the main idea. Our main character, Buck, has a new master which he loves. So in the drawing, we can see the representation of this. The new master, John Thornton, and Buck. And again, the question guides students to understand beyond the text by answering how the main character feelings had changed throughout the book. So students' answer was that now Buck feels secure regarding his new master. Even though there were some grammatical mistakes in writing, the message was also could be conveyed and everyone could understood. Since this was a presentation, students could make clarifications while speaking. Finally, as you can see, the group number 3 also achieved the proficiency level in this rubric. Even though it's not in the rubric, the 6 groups received the comments that their drawing can help the reader to understand their summary, because through the drawing we can notice also the main idea. In this case, the master, John Thornton, with the dog, as I said previously. And the evidence, the general context in this piece of writing, was also well explained. That is why these 3 types of evidence and the other 3 groups received the 9 points. After analyzing the students' posters, we can interpret that they comprehend the text because of the summaries they did. Moreover, the reading strategy used was useful for them because they could easily organize their work. Likewise, this activity encouraged the students to discuss about what they were reading in order to distinguish between main and secondary ideas. Finally, we can determine that the learning objective was successfully reached because all 6 groups were able to make a summary in which they could identify the main idea of the text. For this reason, we can say that the learning objective was valid and aligned with the student's proficiency level.
Use of data. All the information gathered from students' posters constitute meaningful evidence of what is happening in the classroom in terms of the students' learning progress. These posters embody useful snapshots for students, teachers, and school administration to keep track of the students' learning in this particular moment. Moreover, the students can receive feedback, and the teacher, based on the student's outcome can use formative strategies in daily instruction. Additionally, this poster can easily be graded, and by doing so, comply with the school administration demands. However, the purpose of this poster was assessing students for learning. Hence, feedback was the main goal of this assessment.
Well, finally, we conclude that it was a proper activity asking the students to discuss with their peers about what they believed were the main ideas of the text, because they can come up with an agreement about what is more important and which ideas can be considered as secondary ones. However, we believe that as the process of reading is individual and students address the text according to their background knowledge, the interpretation and conclusions that they get once reading the whole text will be different. Therefore, when assessing reading, it can be more suitable to propose individual tasks. Nonetheless, if teachers ask students to perform and demonstrate mastery of a skill through the usage of another skill, it might result in a mismatch between the ideas that the students have and the way they are going to transmit them, either orally or through writing.